Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are all having a very excellent day. Today we have a very exciting episode, the first episode in a brand new series on how to build out the Twitter application. So the reason why I picked out this application is because I think it's very helpful in order to showcase some of the very fundamentals that you should have as an iOS programmer. Now, how are we going to build out this very complicated application? Well, first I'm going to show you guys a very quick demo as to what we're going to build towards in the next couple of episodes, and then I'm going to break it down into very small steps so you guys can see how we're going to accomplish this task. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. We start today's lesson by looking at the simulator, and we have Twitter loaded up inside already, and we can scroll this list up and down very nicely. Clicking onto one of these users, we get the detailed information as to their info. And going back, I want to focus today's video on building out this top section at the very top right here. And what you're seeing in this list is actually a UICollectionView. We have a header at the very top right here, a list of cells inside, and a footer at the very bottom of this top section of the collection view. So I want to go ahead and break this down into a very easy to build diagram right here. So inside of Photoshop, I have this mock, right? So let me just shrink this guy down a little bit. And the mock, if you look at the right side, we have the Twitter application, has that very same list. And in order to build this top section out, what you really need to do is you need to deconstruct it just a little bit, and you get what you have in the middle list right here. So the idea is you want to build out a section that contains a collection header, a bunch of cells in the middle, and then you have your footer at the very bottom. So very easy if you can get to this state of the application. But in order to get to this state, you want to further deconstruct the application. And what this really looks like is the list on the left that is just a simple list of words, in this case, just a bunch of cells. So in today's video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how to build this list on the left, and then we're going to evolve it into this list in the middle. So let's get started by heading into Xcode right here. And let's see, I want to create a new project right here. And I'm going to just slide this guy over here. Single view application. I'm going to call it Twitter LBTA. Hit enter, create, and it's going to create this application somewhere on my hard drive and on your hard drive as well. So I'm going to run the application just to make sure I get my simulator loading up that nice white screen. So it's loading, and we get this white screen, right? So what this means is the application is now fully loaded and everything is good to go. So the first thing you will need to do is you kind of want to take a look at the app again. Let's use this guy. So we have this list that I want to build, and we have a navigation bar at the very top and then the view controller at the very bottom. So the very first task is to sort of ignore storyboards. And I'll tell you exactly why we want to ignore them in perhaps episode 2. And to start off the ignore process, so ignore the storyboard, and I'll explain in episode 2 why. So here we go. We want to create this window instance called UIWindow, and this window is going to take in a frame of UI screen main.bounds. And I'm going to make a window visible with key visible like that. So what is this window? Well, basically every application lives inside a window, and we're going to create this window manually ourselves. Usually the storyboard does this, but we want to ignore the storyboards, right? So here we go, we have our window, right? And run the application, it's going to crash. And the reason it crashes is because it'll tell you actually down in the console. So it's very useful to observe these messages down in the console. And down here it says that it's expecting the window to have a root view controller, which means you can create this window root view controller equals UI navigation controller, and in here it contains another root view controller. Now I'll use the view controller that the application gives me as my template project right here, which is this view controller right here. So everything's going pretty well. We now have the application loaded up, but it contains a black screen. So the reason why it contains a black screen is because view controller, when it's not constructed by the storyboard, gives you a default black background color. So I'm going to change it to background color of dot white and run the application, removing those couple of lines, and wait for the application to load. It's going to show us a white screen with a navigation bar at the very top. So very nice and a very good place to start coding our app. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ditch this view controller, and I'm going to create a new file called home controller. So Swift file home controller. Let's see how fast I can do this. So home controller right here. First, you want to import UIKit and create this class called home controller. And what I'm going to subclass it as is this UICollectionView controller like that, and just override viewDid load, super viewDid load. And down here, I'm going to say collectionView.background color equals perhaps.green. So we have just created a home controller class, which contains this collection view. And now going back to app delegate, I can instead set this to home controller. So home controller like that, and attempt to run the application. But again, it's going to crash, and I'm going to show you what the console crash error is trying to tell us. So it's crashing, crashing, crashing. And here we go. Non-nil layout parameter must be initialized inside of this home controller. So pretty confusing if you have never seen this error before. So what it means is you want to construct it like this, home controller, like this, and use this collection view layout constructor, which you'll provide with UICollectionView flow layout. And there we go. Let's now replace that with the instance that we just created above. And now we can run the application and see that our collection view is going to have a green background just like that. So pretty nice. Now that we have home controller set up, let me just drag this up here. And like I said before, I'm going to blow away view controller because I don't really want it hanging around. I'm going to delete the main storyboard right there. And every time you delete the main storyboard, you got to make sure you delete that as well. I don't know if it crashes, probably gives you just a warning, but because we don't have the storyboard file, let's just remove it from the application configuration. So now that everything is nice and tidy, I want to go back to the previous screen right here. So inside the mock, right, we're going to create this very, very simple list on the left, which is this guy right here. And let's go ahead and do that right now by first implementing how many cells, or the number of cells to return. In this case, it's 6, but we can just use any value we want. So number of items inside of section, it's going to return perhaps 4. And then I'll return cell for item at index path. So I know a lot of you guys already know how to do this. For those of you guys that don't know how a collection view works, you can view a video down in the description below for a more thorough and detailed description as to how this functions. Okay, so cell for item at index path, you want to just say let cell equals collection view. You want to dequeue a cell from the collection view. And this reuse identifier, let me just remove the file explorer. Reuse identifier I'll create up here. So let's let cell ID equals cell ID. Go down here. Reuse identifier is that cell ID string, like that. Index path is just that from this guy right here. And then finally, we will return this cell. So what does this do? Well, it's trying to dequeue a cell with this unique identifier cell ID, and it's going to try to find one. However, it is crashing because we haven't yet registered this cell ID to a unique collection view cell class. So hopefully you guys kind of understand what that means. Don't really want to explain too much, but collection view needs to register a cell class with this cell ID right here. And what is this cell class? I'm going to use UICollectionView cell.self and run the application now. It's going to render out these cells. However, because cells are defaulted to a color of transparent, you don't see what the cells are. Now, to make them a little bit more visible, I'm going to change the cell color to a color of blue. Very convenient, just using .blue. There we go. We have 4 cells that are defaulted to 50 pixels wide and 50 pixels tall. That's how that works. To get these cells to be completely wide, we're going to implement a method called size for item. You notice how we don't have size for item, right? We have two, let's see, UICollectionView delegate flow layout will conform to this protocol, giving us size for item down here, returning a CG size of width, view frame width for the entire width of our view controller, and height will just be some random arbitrary value of 50. So running this app now, we're going to get a fully wide blue cell in the application, just like this. And now we're ready to kind of go on to the next step here, which is to remove this green color here. So I'm going to change it to dot white. And then what are we going to do? Well, we want to put some words inside of each one of these individual cells. So how do we do that? Well, instead of registering a default UICollectionView cell, we want to register our own custom cell. So let's create this custom cell class. Let's say word cell, UICollectionView cell is the parent class. And here is the tricky part. Let's use init frame super init right here, frame. So why are we doing this? Well, this gets called when a cell is dequeued, like that. And then we're going to get a compiler error that flags us to click that and click that. Still don't really exactly know why we have to do this, but nonetheless, that's what we need to do. So now that we have this word cell, I want to replace UICollectionView cell as the registered cell class for that cell ID. And now I'm going to say background color equals dot yellow. And we will hope to see yellow cells being rendered now instead of that blue cell, right? But we see blue cells because it is being changed to blue immediately after is being set to yellow. So removing the blue color line, the cells inside of our collection view will hopefully be yellow, just like that. There we go, we got yellow cells, meaning we are now rendering a word cell that we just created. All right, so to get these labels in here, to get these labels like that, I'm going to do this instead. So I prefer to have a function called setup views like that. And I like to call setup views inside of the initializer. Let's bring the yellow color in here. And now I want to say add subview of some label, right? Some label needs to actually contain these hello, how are you text strings. And I will say let word label. So I'm going to construct this guy a little bit programmatically like this. Word label is of type UI label. I'm going to execute this closure like that. And what goes inside of this closure? Well, let's just use a very quick label constructor like that. Label that text equals test, test, test. Okay. And let's just return this label guy. And now we have word label equaling whatever's inside of here. So I think we need a equal sign instead of the colon. Here we go. So adding the subview requires us to add the word label like that. And if we run this application now, it's not going to render this word label. And the reason is because we haven't anchored, we haven't placed this word label inside of the cell to make it renderable, I guess. There we go. How do we want to put it onto the screen? Well, I like to use anchors to lay out my subviews. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the top anchor left, bottom, and right to the parent or to the entire cell's anchor system. And here we go. I'm going to say top anchor, constrain to, you can say self.top anchor. And then you have to activate it by setting isActive equals to true. So doing that, we can copy, paste, 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 and do the exact same thing for left anchor. Let's see, bottom anchor, one more time, right anchor. And now let's just copy this over here, copy that, bottom, right anchor in here. And if we run this guy, it is still not going to render the text label because of this really, really silly issue of setting label translates AutoResize Math into constraints. You actually need to set it to false. And you notice this warning down here, really, really confusing warning, but what you have to do to fix it is to set this AutoResize Math property to false. There we go, we get our text labels. So very nice. And if we go back to our mock is pretty much complete with step number 1 on the left. So how do we get to step number 2? Well, we need to render a couple of headers and then a very, very nice footer at the very bottom of our section. And that's very, very easily done as well. And the steps are similar. So let's go ahead and implement the header right now. And what you need to do is inside of the home controller right here, I'm going to say collection view dot, let's say register view class for supplementary view of kind, and we're going to just start off with a good old UICollectionView cell. What is this kind parameter? Well, it's UICollectionElement kind section header. And what is this reuse identifier? Well, let header ID equals header ID. And finally, filling that last parameter out, we have now completed the registration process of the header. So we can now begin the process of dequeuing it and rendering it on the top of our collection view right here. And how do we do that? Well, the process involves 2 methods that we have to implement. The first of which is to override this thing called view for supplementary element of kind. And in here, I'm going to say let header equals collection view. And I'm going to dequeue this supplementary view with this kind parameter like there, header ID and index path, and return this header guy. Right. So if you run this application now, you're not going to see the header because we have yet to provide the size of the header. So there we go. And for the size, we want to say ref size header like that. And we get this reference size for header and section method, returning a CG size of width, view frame width, and height of 50. So I'm doing this pretty quickly, and I'm going to run this application. You're going to see exactly what this method does for our collection view. So we have this blank space up here, right? And that is the header. I'm going to prove it to you by setting the background color to a very nice blue. It's going to render blue right above all of your cells representing your header. And to move on to the footer, it is exactly the same step with one exception. So let's create this footer ID equals footer ID. Go down below and say collection view register view class for that. Say UI collection view cell.self kind will UI collection footer. So element kind section footer. Reuse identifier is this footer ID guy. And down below, in order to render the footer, we need to provide a size for the footer. So let's just see, what does this say? Ref size footer, like that. And we get this method, right? So let's just return the exact same thing as the header, but with a height of 100. So I want a very tall footer, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And here we go. I'm going to render it, but it fails because, let's just see what the error says. I already know, but let's just see. So it says that this UI collection or element kind footer is registered with this header ID. So why is the footer doing with the header? Well, it is a little hard to explain, so I'm going to show you what that means. Inside of view for supplementary element of kind, you first need to check the kind first, and basically the error is you're returning the header for the footer. So it's very confusing, right? So you got to check if the element kind is UI collection header, then you return the header. So that is the problem. Otherwise, we want to return the footer, which I will change this piece of code. So footer like that, footer right there, and this needs to be footer ID. So running this application now, our headers, cells, and footers will now be correctly rendered into our list like this. So I want to change the bottom to a green color. Is it going to come up? Nope. So one more time, running the app, we have completely rendered out this section of our kind of design mock right here. You see our cells in the middle, a green footer, and a blue header. So what is the point of doing all of this, right? I really wanted to illustrate something very, very important in this class, in this home controller, and also inside of this Word itself. So the point of this whole thing is you don't really want to run through this entire exercise every time you want to build a new list. So let's take a look at a Twitter application, and let me illustrate my point here. If we build out this second screen right here, we have another list, and it's another controller. I don't want to go through this entire exercise and jump through all these hoops just to construct this list. Not only is it very time consuming, it's very exhausting as a programmer as well. So what is the solution to this problem? Well, I'm basically open sourcing a package called LBTA Components, and inside of this package, it contains a very, very nice framework that allows us to build these kinds of lists in just a couple of lines of code. All right, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Really hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. Make sure to leave a thumbs up for the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Also, don't forget, if you want to download the source code for today's video, you can find the link in the description down below. So in the next episode, we're going to take a look at installing the LBTA Components package, how to use it to save ourselves a lot of time and a lot of headache in creating these very, very nice looking lists. Okay, hope you guys stay tuned for that. Keep on coding, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.